Good morning, everybody, guys, girls, and others of the internet. Today, I'm going to go ahead and go over the archery and throwing weapons tree. This is a series I'd like to do, kind of just going over each tree, just kind of discussing what they give, going over some of the information that's there, just because, there isn't a whole lot on the internet yet about this game, and so I figured, hey, if I put in the time and research, here you guys go. Right here is a couple of walls I set up, both wood and thatch, just to kind of showcase some of the numbers of using the flaming arrow and then flaming arrow with oil jars. I did all that beforehand just for time's sake, but the first wall is with just a fire arrow. So the wood wall, it's about 150 damage. In my opinion, not worth it. Way too many arrows. Bows break way faster using fire arrows. However, you go over here, this is with one oil jar, and a fire arrow. It takes 1 minute for an oil spot to fully burn, and does about 1,000 damage. This wall is with 2 oil jars, except you throw the first oil jar and then throw the second one only 30 seconds later, which is interesting because look at this. Look about the same, right? About 2,000 damage each, give or take a couple of tens. This wall, however, is when I threw an oil jar, lit it on fire, and let it burn for 55 seconds. Almost completely burning out the first oil spot, and then applying a second one. This was on fire about 2 minutes. This was on fire about 1:30. Same damage, though. What I've discovered with fire is it does over 50% of its overall DOT damage in the first 20 seconds with the oil spots, since they burn for a minute. And then it gradually becomes less and less as it burns. But same thing over here. 1 fire arrow, 600 damage. 1 fire arrow, 1 oil jar, about 4,000 damage. 2 oil jars separated by 30 seconds, did about 7,500 damage. And then right here, same thing, about 7,500. And this is 2 oil jars separated by 55 seconds. So the fastest way, if you're in a rush, to burn down a wall is by separating it by 30 seconds each. You'll still see, as you can tell here, the max amount of damage, and you're cutting out 30 seconds each time, And it only takes 1 fire arrow as long as you keep throwing an oil jar on before before that minute is done. And then, just so you guys know, stone, fire does nothing to it. I'll go ahead and show the grenade real quick. Some of its uses. This one will actually showcase, like this for example, is 1,000 health. So we'll go ahead and throw that. And then run down here and do it to a thatch wall real quick. So as you can see here, about 300 damage. Not very effective against wood, surprisingly, in my opinion. Throw one against the stone while we go check the thatch. And as you can see, about 1,150. Not bad. I still don't know if it'd be necessarily worth it because it's just a thatch hut. What are you really getting? But for stone, it does about 400. That's not terrible considering it's a stone structure. So grenades are more effective against stone structures. Got some dummies here. I kind of wanted to show you how big the AoE these grenades are. So we got that guy right there, and it's going to reach all the way to this guy right there. So we threw the grenade around here, and it reached over there. As you saw, that about 400 damage on explosion, and the big blue numbers hovering overhead is the DPS. So when you damage a training dummy, it starts a 5-second timer. At the end of that 5 seconds, it'll take all the damage it has taken and divide it by 5 to give you the overall damage per second for every 5 seconds. For example, shoot a fire arrow. Gonna let that burn, go and change the ammo. Let's see, 57 DPS right there. So in those 5 seconds, you take that 57, times it by 5, that's how much damage it did. DPS 60. Take that, times 5, that's how much damage it did in the final 5 seconds. Pretty cool, huh? Alright. So looking at some of the skills we got on here. There is obviously basics of the bow, gives you the bow and stone arrows. Secrets of the bow gives you the flame arrow and the zipline anchor. Basics of throwing gives you the oil jar and throwing knives. Now, if you're just wanting to craft majority of the useful items here, you could stop at basics of throwing, because it gives you the bow, the fire arrows. We'll showcase the zip lines in a second. We'll also showcase the throwing knives, and the oil jars are very useful, as you had saw. Now, the rest of this buffs how much your bow shakes, like that, which, in my opinion, isn't that bad, but, to each their own. Probably better if you're trying to do long-range sniping. And then strong arm, which will increase the damage of your bow and your throwing knives. Arbalest, I will show you guys. It is good, but I do not know if it is worth it. Piercing shot is the feat you can unlock. Essentially, your guy stands still, charges up a magical arrow, and you let it fly after like a second or two of charging. It is supposed to have a greater velocity, is what I assume it means by speed, so it'll travel further and faster, not much travel time, increases the overall damage, and the armor penetration. So this may be good for one-shotting an armored target. I have not seen it happen, and I have not tested it, because I'm only on single player right now. But I've shot a pig with it, and it does almost 200 damage. That's with no armor. Now, if it's supposed to have increased armor penetration, I could see it one-shotting an armored opponent as long as he doesn't have above like 150 health. I would assume it stacks with the other strong arm perks. It gets down to a total of 60%, and then you get the improved piercing shot, which just increases all of its stats, even faster, even more damage, even more penetration. As you can see on this side is the more steady aim. On the right side of the tree, I don't really like this, but you have to learn all the ballistic studies, which gives you access to bows and spears up to mythical quality. And yeah, like, that's cool and all in my opinion, but it kind of sucks you gotta get all that just to get the grenade, which, as you saw, it is nice, but in my opinion not the greatest. It is nice with how mobile it is. Now there's firearms. I do believe this is the only way to get to the firearms, but we're not talking about that right now. So there's some of the perks. I have all of them unlocked, so all the numbers you will be seeing henceforth is with this, in terms of the bow. And the shake you actually saw, this is what the shake looks like with all the added stuff. So as you can see, it keeps it in a pretty tight little circle. Now right here you'll see I'm hitting for 45. The bow at base level, common, no extra perks, just 35. So once you've added up all the different perks, you will get an extra 10 damage per shot, which is nice, but I like the appeal of being able to rapid fire my shots, and it does about as much damage as, a normal bow with fully charged shots. And as you can see, you can get the DPS pretty high. Like, we'll see what we can get to with this. Just rapid firing it. About 32 damage a second. So, so each arrow is being sent out 1 second apart. Pretty good. I like it. Another advantage of the bow and arrow is how versatile it is. You can build it and fix it just by hitting a couple plants, killing an animal, and chopping down a tree. And then there you go. You got your bow, hit some flint, now you got your arrows. So you're never without this weapon. And I think that's beautiful. It also works in water. You do take reduced damage, however. For example, the bow does 21 damage per shot underwater, and that's without the buffs. So it'll do more if you have the strong arm stuff. However, grenades, oil jars, the arbalest, those don't affect anything underwater. So right here we'll show the arbalest. And wait for that cooldown. Now, the arbalest, my only issue is it kind of sucks the fact that whatever bolts you bring with you is how many bolts you have. If your crossbow breaks, it's done. you don't get to build this stuff out in the open. You have to have a smithy. But as you can see, she fires quick, and she does good damage. 50 damage a shot, not affected by the strong arm perk, so if you're just going for the arbalist, stop there. She can't even use the piercing shot ability. But then as you see, for the first 4 shots, because she has a clip size of 6, for the first 4 shots you get a DPS of 40. Then after that, it'll obviously go down, and it'll be a 20. That's because you gotta reload after. So it is nice, but I feel like if you're gonna have this, like you need to have a lot of bolts on you. I think it weighs you down a lot, so I don't know if it is entirely worth it. In my opinion, of course, it is a great weapon. I will not deny that. Throw the spear on here, but these are throwing knives. These guys are nice. I'm pretty sure they actually increase your speed when you have them in melee and you're running around. They do 26 damage per shot. The melee is not affected by the strong arm perk, just so you know. But then the throwing of it, it goes with dodge. The throwing of it is what's nice. 122 damage to an unarmored target, because I assume these dummies are supposed to represent people without armor. Pretty significant in my opinion. You can get some really crazy damage with these things. Now they have some pretty serious fall off when you start getting to like mid to long range distances. Like right here, we're hitting the head, but look how high above it we're aiming. Yes, that's hitting like the arm. So you got to give it a considerable amount of leeway when you're at a distance. However, very nice weapon. Again, it can be used when underwater. But we got our own little dummy right here. Just so you know, doesn't matter where you are, it's where the target is. If the target's underwater, they take that reduced damage. I'm curious if you hit the head when it's not underwater. Okay, cool. So pretty much any part of the body underwater takes the reduced damage. Now if you have the spear gun, you cannot use it when you yourself or the gun is above water. Like that. You have to be submerged. But does 132 damage. The reload on it isn't too terrible. So if you are hanging out in the water and, you know, you want to hit some dudes, harpoon gun isn't a terrible option. However, again, you are limited to how many you can craft in the smithy. And then I'm pretty sure all these, there's a chance they'll break, but you can pick them up after you've used them. Go ahead and throw the spear back on. And then we will showcase some of the movements with the spear, because the spear throwing damage is also increased with the strong arm perk. Again, another cool weapon, just because you can make it anywhere. Look at that, 97. Has quite the wind up time. If you throw it faster, goes on to 81. Still pretty good damage. That's a nice damage to be using when some guy's running up on you and you want to hit him with the first shot. And even if they're at a distance, if you hold Y, right trigger, you get quite the little leap right there. See that? Hold left trigger and hold Y and press left trigger. You get this little poke maneuver. Let's see. It's pretty far. It doesn't do a lot of damage. I think it stuns or does torpor damage, but it's pretty far away. Now if you're holding X and then right trigger, you block. Left trigger, block. Hit left and right trigger at the same time. It is of course the lunge again. And then you got your standard just swipe. So spear, pretty versatile tool. It's essentially like a lesser version of the throwing knife. Except the throwing knives, in my opinion, are a little more worth it because, I don't know, I was really looking. Like compared to the arbalist, I mean. Just because, again, it's something that, you know, if you run out when you're on the field and you don't have access to a smithy, it's gone. But I do think they're nice just because they're easy, they're mobile. It's however many you have stacked that you can use. You get that little speed bonus when you have it out. Now, like right here, I'm sprinting. Now I'm sprinting with this. Just sprinting with the knife. And even if it isn't a speed increase, it gives you a peripheral increase, so you can see further around you. Alright, so once you have reached a high surface, and you want to get across to somewhere that's lower than you, is when these prove to be useful. Go ahead and launch your arrow out, and it's wherever it lands, it'll anchor. And you go ahead and just wait a second. You'll see this little green dot. Just kind of toss that wherever that's kind of higher up, and you get that little decline. Now you can only travel the zip line down. Alright, here we go. So you got to make sure you're not in combat mode. God, look at his arms. But yeah, it's nice. Like, look at this. You know, if you're going from like one side of the mountain to the other, boom, no problem. Now again, you cannot go back up. I have been looking this direction, pressing Y, and it still sends me down here. The only downside is you only travel downwards with it, but when you're trying to get to that one spot that's across a large distance, as long as your arrows can fly that far, then you're good. Alright, I do believe that is everything from the archery and throwing weapons tree. If you guys have any other questions, comments, concerns, go ahead and let me know in the comments below. Again, I kind of want to go through each one of these skill lines and just kind of explain them. This is just the one I decided to start with. If you guys have any other tips or any other techniques you want to go ahead and share down below, of course, please do that. If you guys have any more suggestions for video ideas or anything you'd like to see personally, again, by all means, let me know. I will go ahead and try to respond to as many people as I can. And I hope you guys have a great day and have fun out there. Bye.